Well, good afternoon and welcome. This is the first of these meetings we've had since March. And so we have a fair amount of business to cover, but I am delighted that we're all together for a change again. And one of the first things I want to do is to mention that we have 26 new residents. Now, as you know, ordinarily we bring them in and introduce them as real people, but since we have more than what we can put in this room right now, what we're going to do is just kind of list them, and when you meet these folks, give them the genuine Springmore welcome. I'm going to start off with Carol Lewis, then Beth and R.E. Cobb, Henry Perkins, Barbara Pisdel, Jim and Judy Hale, Carol Minna, Bob and Nancy Jo Fleming, Gail Brock, Harry and Marcia Knight, Francois Doherty, and as I said, we had a lot of new folks, and I'm going to continue now. Diane Stade, Harvey Walls, Bobby Holder, Judge Sid and Rachel Eagles, Betty Price, Sue Haney, Tom and Carol Zimmerman, and yes, we still have some more new residents. Wayne Williams, Chris and Judy Hoffman, Phil Poovey, Bill and Francis Daniel, Dan and Lib Rayford, Dell and Sherman Dillard, Charlotte Bailey, and David and Barbara Smith. And as I said, we want to give a hearty welcome to all of our new residents and hope that very soon they will be able to see Springmore as most of the rest of us know it really is, a very warm and welcoming community. And now we'll get down to some business. And I would like to have you again meet Kay Bullock. Kay wore several hats. She was the chair of our nominating committee, and she also served as chair of our bylaws committee. And she's going to talk about both of these with you, okay?
Good afternoon. First, a thank you to this year's nominating committee. The following people served with me: Edith Klemstein, Sue Pauley, Jean Salter, and Susan Walton. Today, the nominating committee presents to you a slate of officers for the Residents Association. This slate has been posted at North and South Villages and printed in the Herald and the Resident Memorandum. You may make nominations by calling 704 during this meeting. The resident you additionally nominate must have agreed to serve in the position for which they are nominated. If there are no additional nominations during this meeting, the following slate will be approved by acclamation. President Julia McCullers, Vice President Peg Bedini, Secretary Judy Fry, Director Carol Bryan, Director Sylvia Doles, Director Barbara McGee, and Director Dave Waters. Thank you.
Please repeat the telephone number.
Yes, I will repeat the telephone number: 7054. Okay, last March, the Executive Committee approved changes in the Constitution and bylaws that have been displayed near the bulletin boards and post offices in North and South Villages. Today, I'm asking for a vote on these changes that have been displayed and approved by the Executive Committee. Is there a motion to approve? Thank you, Dave. Is there a second? Thank you, Peg. Could I have a show of hands All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, for your good work. And also, if you have a chance and you haven't had a chance to see the bylaw changes yet, you might want to take a quick look-see because there were a fair amount of changes as far as what used to be the computer committee. And I think we've upgraded it because of the many, many additional things that we have going on right now. And we always like to be the bearers of good news, so I'm going to let Peg Bedini, the chair of the Endowment Committee, share that good news with you.
Thank you, Jan. I just wanted to take this personal opportunity to thank you for your wonderful contributions during our week of our endowment campaign. It seems almost unbelievable with everything else that's going on that we wound up with a 1 week total of $57,648. If we add that total to all that has been donated to the endowment this year in the monthly reports, which you have gotten, we have added to our fund $102,020.03. That certainly is a great indication of the kind of people who live at Springmoor. You are generous and you are neighbors helping neighbors. Thank you so much on behalf of the Endowment Committee.
And thank you, Peg, for chairing the Endowment Committee and for all the hardworking members of the Endowment Committee. And now I'd like to turn the microphone over to our chaplain, Lori Higgins, who has a few announcements.
Thank you and good afternoon. Just a couple of announcements from the chaplains. First, I wanted to say that beginning tomorrow is a grief support group that will be running for 6 weeks. We have a new curriculum. It is a grief share curriculum, and it is an interfaith-based grief curriculum. Also, we have reformatted, you've probably already seen this in Pathways, we've reformatted some of the chaplains groups due to space limitations. So the Connections discussion group will meet on the first and third Thursdays of the month. So please be looking at that in your Pathways. Thank you.
And thank you, Lori. And now we're going to move on to probably one of the most, what would I say, weighted speakers that we have each year, and that is our Comptroller, Philip Hey, Philip, come on up. I thought I was going to get it right this time.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to just start off today by discussing, well, there will be two topics that I'll be discussing today. The first one will be the budget, the 2021 budget, which was approved recently by our board, and your board rather. And the second topic is something new that I'm going to be discussing. And it's just one slide, but just to give you a general overview. As you know, COVID's been with us now for over 7 months, and it doesn't seem to be abating. And I'm sure many of you are wondering what the cost of COVID will have or has had on our financials year to date and what we expect through to the end of December. So I'll be presenting to you something on the cost of COVID and how that impacts our financial performance. Moving on into our budget, the general topics that I want to present today is a 2021 operating budget goals, significant changes that we've had from 20 budget to 21 budget, our total operating revenues and how they're constructed, how each dollar is budgeted, and ultimately how we plan on spending it, the operating budget summary. Then I'll take a look at the historical rate increases that we've had, and then we'll move on to what the rate increase will be for 2021. Looking at our first topic, the operating goals, what we do here is a top-down and a bottom-up budget approach. What that means, on the top-down, we're looking at all of our revenue line items, and we have almost 45, I believe it's 45 revenue line items that we budget. Looking at the bottom-up approach, we look at every expense. Each department has varying amount of the budget line items, and we go through every line item. Every manager is responsible for budgeting their individual cost center, and then that's presented to Brendan and I. We then in turn take it to executive management, and then we present the budget to your board for approval. We being a 501c, do a zero-based budget. What that means is that we're always looking at a break-even budget or as close to zero as we can get. This is accomplished, obviously, by comparing our revenues versus our expenses and then making adjustments to our revenue line item after we've already gone through all of the expenses and coming up with a zero-based budget. And of course, our goal is always to spend your money wisely and plan accordingly, and always think about how and what we are spending on your behalf. If we look at the 2021 versus the 2020 budget, there's some significant changes with individual line items or with individual cost centers. Home care. We've increased our revenues and our costs by 7.3% year over year. Now, we've made some significant changes there. We just announced, or are in the process of announcing, I hope I can say it, an increase in salaries for the home care staff to try to improve the amount of staff that we have available to you as residents for this service, and trying to keep as much of this revenue in-house as we possibly can. Yes, it does create a profit for us. We cover our cost, we provide good service, and we do make a little bit of extra revenue on the side. Our wellness is increasing. If we look at our wellness cost center, the main areas there are wages and fitness programs. Now, I realize this is probably our smallest cost center, but it is going up 13.2% overall. The services that we're providing, the costs where they're going up, are directly going into services we provide to you. Our reserve will be increasing by 13.2% year over year. This significant increase is due to the health center cost increase that we are planning with the associated with the renovation project that we're going to be starting shortly. Resident life services is going up by 7.1% year over year. Again, here we're looking at special functions and we're looking at activities and entertainment. I would like to stress that the budget is based on year over year being equal, and COVID, I know, is having an impact on us this year, but we are comparing last year to the new coming year when we're talking about this budget. Our building services is also going up by 4.6%. There's one line item that is the key contributor to this, and these are the modifications and renovations that are being initiated by new residents as they're coming in. It's a pass-through item that also shows up on the revenue side, but it does drive the cost up in Randy's department. Grounds are being increased by 4.1%. Tom continues to strive to make improvements to the grounds and keep them as beautiful as they can be for you as residents. I myself am enjoying the nice walks, especially now with the weather, and I see many of you taking advantage of our facilities and the paths that we have. It's great to see all of you out there. Our overall personnel cost increase for all departments, across all departments, is going up 3%. Stewart Health Center, this is now a decrease based on the occupancy that we've been experiencing, and we anticipate. We have taken the planned occupancy in our Stewart Health Center from 121 last year to 115 residents, occupants that are also paying for being in the health center. We do have temporary there as well, but 115 residents expecting to give revenue for that. In a way, that's almost a blessing with the project that we're going to be going, that at least we won't have a shortage of beds and we won't have less people that we need to move around as we go through the project. Looking at our revenue, as I indicated, we have 45 different line items that we plan during the budget cycle. Going clockwise here, the largest revenue line item is our independent living. Independent living occupancy is set at 95%. Marketing, of course, gives you probably 98 to 99% occupied. We are full. However, from a financial perspective, I plan for 95% occupancy. That means that those are units where we have residents who are providing us with revenue and paying the monthly service fees. There are always 15 or so units that are in some type of planned booking. They're in renovation, and new residents are planned on coming in. We usually have a few, very limited, right now I believe it's less than 5 units that are still waiting new residents. Just to give you an idea, we have 388 independent apartments, villas, and homes that we and marketing are responsible for selling here. Our next category is the Stewart Health Center. The Stewart Health Center revenue is $10.9 million for next year planned. That's, again, with occupancy of 115 residents. We are licensed for 191, by the way. That's a 60% occupancy, and that compares to 63.5% occupancy budgeted last year. The next category is our home care. We expect to break the $1 million, and I believe we've been doing home care now 7 years. So that's a tremendous amount of revenue being brought in by home care, very dedicated staff, and they're doing a tremendous job. And that's just over $1 million for 2021. Looking at the rest of our categories, that's over 40 line items that we plan, we have $1.5 million in revenue under other or miscellaneous. This is just a different method of looking at that revenue, or how each dollar is spent, And again, going clockwise, the largest area of expense for Springmore is 23 cents of every dollar goes to the Stewart Health Center. The next line item is food services at 20 cents. Moving on, our reserve category is 17 cents per dollar. General operating is 12 cents per dollar. Housekeeping, 6. Building services, 5. Admin is 4. And the other categories make up the remaining 13 cents per every dollar that we spend. And here's the other method of looking at that, breaking it down a little bit more in detail. As you can see, security, activities, clinic, grounds, they're all listed here as well. In summary, our operating budget for next year, we're planning total operating income of $31.663 million. Breakdown of our major expenditures: salaries and benefits, $18.67 million. 58.9% of every dollar we earn and every dollar we spend goes to salaries and benefits. Our reserve category, $7.3 million, or 11.7% of our total expenditures. Food services, which includes the Sodexo contract management, $2.7 million, and that's 8.6% of the total. Utilities, 4% of our total at $1.27 million. The remaining line items are $5.3 million, or 16.8%. Total operating expenses for next year are planned at $31.692 million. That leaves us with an expected deficit of $29,000. This is a chart that shows the last 14 years of our historical rate increases. The average independent living increase over the 14 years has been 3.3%. Our average increase for Stewart Health Center has been 3.8% per year over the last 14 years. Our highest increase in independent living came in 2007 at 3.85%. And our highest Stewart Health Center increase was way back in 2009 at 5.3%. For the coming year, we've planned an increase of 3.4% flat across the board. Now, there's one major difference that we've done this year, and again, this was approved by the board, was presented and approved by the board. Normally, our rate increases take effect October 1st. This year, the board has agreed to move that increase back to November 1st. That change impacts our financials by $65,000. And we hope that it is well received. COVID, pretty much all we hear about. We've been tracking our COVID costs over the last 7 months. And if we look at what has COVID cost us in addition to our normal operating expenditures, we've come up with $161,775 in additional expenditures so far for the 7 months. We look at some of the categories. Employee testing. This is a mandate by DHHS, weekly testing for all health center employees. $85,800. PPE, this is in addition to the normal PPE that we would be buying and consuming in the health center, $17,482. Cleaning supplies. Again, this is based on what we consume in addition to what we normally go through during this time frame, $10,600. We have had COVID cases in the health center. We have had residents in isolation and in quarantine. Employees who tend to those residents receive hazard pay. This is an additional premium on top of their regular hourly rates and all other shift premiums that they may receive. To date, we don't have anybody, I believe, now in that wing, but to date we have spent $9,489 in additional hazard pay to these deserving employees. Something as simple as thermometers. You see them all over. We require everybody to be checked. Every employee, every guest now that comes in has to have their temperature checked before they walk into the building. That alone is $1,400 so far that we've spent. COVID's restricted many of our activities as well. You all have experienced it, you know it. That has cost us $117,000 in lost opportunity. Catering functions alone, $75,000 in catering functions, activities. Some of them staff activities, many of them activities for you and your families that you would be holding that just haven't materialized. Guest room rental income. The real estate is paid for. The rooms are ready. They're good to go. We can't have guests at the moment. That's $41,800 in lost opportunity on guest rooms alone. And we've invested heavily in those guest rooms, and we hope that once this is all behind us, that you'll make good use of them again. We also have had some cost savings. Every department manager is requested to look at items that and how we can save within their budget line items without the detriment to the services we're providing to you. We have had a reduction in staff, specifically in areas of food service and in transportation. Those savings are $109,000 so far for the 7 months that we're talking about. Activities, $29,000 in activities. And I apologize that we cannot have those activities for you, but by the same token, there are expenses that we have not incurred. Employee education and training. Hate that we cannot do that. It's betterment of our employees. It enriches all of us. But the fact that we've not been able to send our employees on these training classes, or they've been virtual rather than face-to-face meetings or off-site, that has resulted in almost $19,000 in savings. Vehicles. For a while, our fleets were more or less idle. Doctor's appointments for a large, to the most extent, were canceled, especially in April and May. Although many of you are going to doctor's appointments now, but as a result, we spent less on gasoline and less on maintenance, and that saved us $14,000. The net effect, however, is approximately $110,000 in additional costs so far in the 7 months that we're reporting on. That averages $15,000 a month in cost. And I anticipate in October through December that we can expect another $45,000 to $60,000 in COVID-related expenditures. And we'll be asking every department head to dig a little deeper and try to find that money somewhere so that we do not impact you in the services that we provide to you and maintain our goal of a zero-based budget for the current year. That's it from my side of the presentation. I'll hand it over to Brandon.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just want to say thank you for everybody that's participated in the meeting so far and everything that everyone's done this year for us. Ms. Jan Christensen's been a wonderful president for the past 2 years. She's been a pleasure to serve with, so I know she'll be rotating off, and I just want to wish her well and thank you for everything you've done for us, for the residents and for the staff. Ms. Kay, who put a lot of time in with the nominating committee and the bylaws committee to get that stuff changed. Thank you for that. Ms. Kay's man on the phone back there. And then Ms. Bedini, who's headed up the endowment committee. God, what an amazing year. You heard the total, so that's just fantastic to hear. Over almost 60 grand in just 1 week of a campaign, and then over $100,000 for a year in total contribution. So that's just absolutely amazing. And like Ms. Peg says, it really just speaks to residents taking care of residents or neighbors taking care of neighbors. So it's such a grassroots effort, and it's just amazing to see how well we continue to do. So I want to thank all of them. I also want to thank the Management Advisory Committee the Management Advisory Committee for all they've done this year to help with the budget. Philip puts in a ton of time and effort with this. He gave a fantastic presentation. Hope y'all found that worthwhile and interesting and useful. It will be up on the portal, so you can go back and watch the presentation again. The expenses about COVID I thought was extremely interesting. We've been tracking that and been reporting that to various people when they've asked. So I thought that was a great addition this year to see how those expenses has impacted Springmore. So thank you for the Management Advisory Committee for all they've done to get us to this point and to present a good budget to us that we could present to the board, which was approved, and we're thankful for that. So as the last part, of the presentation, we always answer any questions that residents send, usually a financial interest on the last semi-annual meeting of the year instead of general questions, but of course we'll answer anything that comes up. But I only have 3 questions this year. They're all great questions, so I'm going to take a few minutes to answer each one now, and I want to thank the people that beforehand that submitted these, and we'll go through these right now. The first one, I'll read each one. It says, on September 9th, 2019, a plea was made to Management Advisory stating that the financial arrangement for food payment at Springmore has become obsolete and should be amended. A survey of all houses and villas done prior to last year's meeting was reviewed by you at the September 9th meeting, referring to last year's meeting. We were told that the matter was under consideration but could not be implemented at the time. Then COVID attacked us all, and consideration for the food plan was dropped for obvious reasons. It's now a year later, and we still have the same meal plan that we had as last year. The number of Springmore residents discouraged and disappointed by your 2019 inaction has risen. We would beg for the option to be allowed to sign up for either 100, 50%, or 0% of the current meal plan. The reasons are the same: financial, dietary restrictions, and to be able to cook and eat the healthier food we're used to and enjoyed as basic human need, as long as we are mentally and physically able to do so. We have both worked hard trying to help management see the need for change in the dining experience. Please do not let our concerns go aside again this year. We need your help. Sincerely, Lindsay Horenthal and Marilyn McDowell. So they did a great job of presenting this to us. And as they mentioned earlier, we were working on this. It's ironic, we were working on this. Kyle and I had called me, and he said, where are we at with food? We need to talk about that. And literally, within the next week or so, within less than 2 weeks, COVID happened. And unfortunately, it was just the last thing on our mind at the time with everything happening so fast. So it did fall by the wayside because we did have to take to more pressing issues. Being able to just have y'all fed every day was a big enough challenge in itself, much less trying to amend a meal plan. But now we're back to where we're able to look at that. So I'm happy to announce we have had a lot of progress since this was presented. We've had several internal meetings with the 2 ladies mentioned here that submitted the question. They met with management, and from there, they have taken their concern in consideration to the Management Advisory Committee. As you know, the Management Advisory Committee does all the financial aspect of Springmore as far as the resident committees are concerned, and they asked for the Management Advisory Committee to consider and pass on to the Executive Committee. And then the Executive Committee took it under advisement and now has actually approved the suggestion and sent it to me to take before the board on our December 1st meeting of this year. So this will be our last meeting of the year. So I think 2 weeks ago is when we met for the executive committee, and I'll read in hand exactly what was recommended that I take to the board so everyone knows. It's a nice, short, simple request, and I think this is very plausible for action on. It says, we, which is the executive committee, endorse the recommendation of the Management Advisory Committee that Springmore Management explore a meal plan that includes options for participation. So we will take that to the board on December 1st, and we will explore options to see if there is something other than just a plain 30-day meal plan that we can offer y'all. So once we have some more information, be happy to report back and see how that moves along. So thank you for everybody that worked on this, Ms. Horenthal, Ms. McDowell, the Management Advisory Committee, and also the Executive Committee. I look forward to reporting back. So thank you. The second question pertains to food as well. The question is, in our current circumstances, I believe that's due to COVID, they want to know if the delivery of 1 meal a day is accounted for differently, and if not, then why not? So the delivery of 1 meal a day is not counted different. So as y'all know, we've had different methods of the way you get food. We won't go into all that, but delivery was one of the methods we had to do for a while. Now it's a choice, and it will continue to be a choice in the future, but there's going to be a fee associated with it in the near future. So, but in order to deliver a meal, the same costs go into that. So it's the same product, it's the same production, it's the same overhead, and it's the same labor. Just as someone comes and serves you, I have to have somebody that actually deliver the meal. So the meal that's delivered is a flat rate, just as it would be if you came to the dining room. I know the new meal amount is going to be $15.25. So again, a delivered meal would be the same cost as a meal in the dining room, and that is why it's accounted for the same. All the same factors go into creating that meal. All right. Lastly, it's kind of a two-part question. So I'll do take the first one. It is for and this was submitted by Bill. I'm not exactly sure which Mr. Bill this is, but this was addressed. Oh, you know what? No, I assume it was sent to Mr. Bill Marley. I'm not sure who actually submitted it, but the next one was submitted by Miss Elaine Layshock. She wanted to know if someone requested less housekeeping, for example, every 2, 3, or 4 weeks instead of weekly, could our monthly service fee be reduced? Unfortunately, no, that cannot happen. That's not an option now. We explored that when we were talking about meals, but we have not come up with anything to move forward with that yet. I think most everyone knows we're set up as a monthly service fee, and we're all inclusive. So we're not a fee for service, so we don't pay for each individual thing. All the things you have, you pay, and you use some of them, and some of them you don't. Housekeeping is used for not only keeping people, their apartments clean and safe, but they're the eyes and ears of a lot of health things that we see from residents that we may not see behind closed doors. So that is a service we have not looked at reducing for a less monthly service fee. We'll continue to look at that. And if that's something we can explore and do further, of course, we'll be able to, we'll pass that along to you. And lastly, this one's out of my hands, but I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to point Ms. Layshock into the direction of who could hopefully help her with this. Is it possible for the Springmore store to open perhaps one day in the afternoon in place of the morning? So as y'all know, the convenience store that is ran as all resident ran, all volunteered by residents, and Mr. Bob McGaffin heads that up. So if you would like to call Mr. McGaffin and ask him for that, he would be the one that could approve that. I do know they have a pretty tight schedule. They got a dedicated group of residents. Maybe that's something they'd want to consider. Again, that's completely out of our hands. That's all resident driven, and I'd suggest you talk to him. But the convenience store has been so instrumental during COVID. It's really saved people from having to go out. It's had necessary things you've had to get. So they really work hard to have that convenience store for y'all. We've allowed staff in the past to go in there, but we've stopped them from going in there recently to make sure they had an abundance of products for you. So hopefully that has worked well for you. So again, that is the only 3 questions I had. Those were all great questions. I do like when people do submit their name with it so I can get back with them. If you don't, that's no problem as well. I'll still address it, but it makes it a little bit easier to address. And if there's someone watching that has any further questions, you want to ask me specific one-on-one, you know how to get me. I'm always here. You can email, you can call me, and I'll be happy to discuss this in further detail. So I believe, Ms. Jan, anything you'd like to close with? I'll let Ms. Jan close. So thank y'all for a wonderful semi-annual meeting, and we look forward to a great 2021. Thank you.
Well, a very special thank you to both Philip and Brandon for bringing this important information to us. And I didn't hear the phone ringing off the hook, but I'm going to ask Kay what her results are.
There were no further nominations from the floor, so congratulations to President Julia McCullers, Vice President Peg Bedini, Secretary Judy Fry, Director Carol Bryant, Director Sylvia Doles, Director Barbara McGee, and Director Dave Waters.
Obviously, it's going to be in very good hands. Now, is there any additional information or any questions or anything? If not, I'll honor a motion for adjournment. Thank you. Second? Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, all of you.